Welcome back to another episode of the Brighter Web Podcast, giving you insights on growing a small business using the latest technology and marketing best practices. Hi, I'm Robert. That's
Hey.
Mickey over there.
Yes, it is. I'm here with you. This will be a great one. I'm excited to learn about this one because writing a book, like for many people, is on my list. It's something I want to do, but you're published a handful of them already, so I'm excited to kind of unpack how you've done it and some tips you can offer for folks. So
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of people who want to become authors one day, and hopefully this makes it a little bit easier for you.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess just kind of start with the basics here. If I mentioned writing a book, like where do I start?
Yeah, so I mean, I've done this a few times, like you've said, and I've both self-published books, and I just published my first book with a actual publisher, which makes it feel a lot more legit and realistic.
Right.
So yeah,
Yep.
These are a few of the things that I've learned. It's going to be a different experience for everybody, but I mean, it begins with simply writing the book. I mean, that's usually what people
place
think
to
about.
start, yeah.
I mean, believe it or not, like you've got to choose a topic. Like, what is your book going to be about? And many people who want to be an author have that book idea in their head and like, oh man, I just, when I come out with it, it's going to be about this thing and I want to talk about this, and they've got it. A lot of it lives in their head. And so
Yeah.
one of the hardest things is just getting it from there and onto paper, which takes a commitment and takes time. You've got to actually, I think one of the hardest things is it's just an idea for people, but like, is that an idea that you can live with and wrestle with and work with for like the next 2 or 3 years? Because oftentimes that's how long it takes to like just get it out of your head, put it on paper, put words to it, organize it into chapters and sections, and like, it seems like a simple idea of like, hey, create an outline for this. Like, that's what you did when writing an essay in high school, right? But like,
Right.
no, I think actually having an outline, because you've got to have some sort of skeleton in place if you're going to create this thing that's going to be, 100, 200 pages or whatever, like actually create an outline of what's going to get there. And then I think one of the other scary parts for a lot of people is just getting that first draft out. Anne Lamott, who wrote a book called Bird by Bird, which is a fantastic read on anything to do with writing. She says that you need to write a crappy first draft. And she doesn't use the word crappy, but I'm going to substitute that in there for here. Like you're the first time you write the book, any book, I don't care how good a writer you are and how much experience you have, like the first time you write a book, it's going to be bad, and that's okay. Like, realize you just got to get it out of your system, get it on paper, and then improve and edit over and over again until it gets better. So
Yeah. And that's kind of the challenge, I think, too,
Yeah.
is that writing that first draft is a ton of work, but in the grand scheme of things, it's just a first small step in everything you have to do. So
Yes, yeah.
So you did say editing. So what does editing look like? I have my crappy first draft done. I think it's about good, but it probably needs to go through some editing. So what is the process going through that?
Yeah, I mean, that's just realizing that you need to edit is, I think, a big one. Just knowing that,
Yeah.
okay, you've cranked out 60,000 words, but they're not great yet. They're not polished. They're just very rough. And so, yeah, you're just at the beginning of your journey, right? You've reached a peak on the way to the mountain. So, I mean, yeah, you're going to need to start from the very beginning and revise, and you're probably going to need to do that 4 to 5 times at least. Like, you're going to need to go back to the very beginning and maybe take a break and let yourself breathe and give your
Right.
brain some space, but then dive back in. And that's one of the most daunting things, is to plunge at the very beginning and, well, do I tweak this, and how much do I edit? And honestly, I think one of the helpful things to me was like just creating different versions of the document. Like I write in Google Docs to kind of keep everything together. And when I finished that first draft, I just made a copy of it and said, okay, this is version 2. And that gave me the kind of confidence to cut it up and slice everything and delete this paragraph. And, oh, this chapter doesn't work anymore. Like, I'm going to just chunk that. But I knew, I can always go back to the first one if I need to pull from that. But man, I'm just going to start hacking this thing up and hopefully by the end of it, it's 5% better. And then I'm going to do the same
Yep.
thing. I'm going to copy it and go version 3 and hopefully make that 5% better. And just, it's slow and agonizing process, but you've got to do it. And at a certain point, you also want to invite other people into that process and have a few trusted friends or colleagues or mentors or somebody that likes you enough to read a crappy first version
Right.
of this book and give you honest feedback and say, hey, this is a great idea, but man, you really need to change this part up. Or I was really confused by how the structure you had it. Like, maybe you need to change these parts around. And not everybody's capable of doing that. It takes a special person to be able to know how to give that feedback. And they have to have a good enough relationship with you that they can say those things and maybe not hurt your feelings.
Right.
So again, editing in my mind is like the hardest part. It can take the longest amount of time. Again, it can be kind of agonizing to sit there and like wrestle with your own words and ideas, and it's a vulnerable thing to be able to share those in a kind of raw form with somebody else and be able to get that feedback. But that is really what makes or breaks a book, because you can kind of get lost in that, and it can sputter out if it wasn't a strong enough idea, or if you didn't put enough kind of thought and energy into it in the first place, or if you just don't have enough like stamina and determination. Like, you just got to stick with it, and sometimes it means taking a pause from it and walking away for a year or so, and then if you're dedicated enough, you'll come back to it and kind of breathe new life into it and keep it going.
Yep. Yeah, well said. So that's maybe the toughest part, but we're still not quite done yet. So what's up next here?
So usually by that point, if you've actually gotten a book that's edited, and again, maybe if you have a publisher you're going with, they can even help in that process and determine whether or not, okay, this is in a good enough shape where now we can kind of take it along to the next step, which is, designing the book, making it kind of feel a lot more real. And once you get to this point, it can be a lot more encouraging. Like, if you're able to kind of get over that hump and actually see, oh man, this is what the book could actually look like laid out. Like, when you get those book cover designs from a publisher or from a graphic designer friend or whoever is working on a design for your book, because I think that's also another important point, is that sometimes you can DIY a lot of this stuff yourself, but when it comes to design, if you don't know how to design, it is really worth engaging with a professional who does that for a living to make it look good. Because again, we say don't judge a book by its cover, but we do that. There's a reason that's a saying.
Yep.
People do actually take a look at your title and your cover, and that determines very largely whether or not they want to pick it up and actually buy it. So invest the money with, again, a publisher or with a designer, so that your book will actually look professional and will accurately reflect the quality that's inside it. So yeah, that's can be an encouraging process, especially if you're working with somebody who's good, who's professional. And then, the same thing, share that with other people, get some feedback and focus group on the design of the book, especially the cover, to make sure that it's actually resonating with the people that it should.
Gotcha. Very good. So you have your book done, it's designed, it looks beautiful, but you need to get it out there. And there's a lot of different ways to get books out there. So what would you recommend for someone to consider as they're trying to figure that out?
Sure. This part is also, again, kind of can be daunting. Again, if you have a publisher, they can take care of a lot of this stuff for you. Thankfully, Amazon makes it very easy to self-publish, and that was the route that I went at first, just to kind of get a couple books under my belt, which was very helpful. And Amazon thankfully makes it very easy. If you go the publishing route, again, they're taking care of it for you, but as I have learned in this process, it's very complex and very opaque.
Yes.
Like, the publishing industry is one that I still don't quite understand the nuances of, and why I appreciate having a partner who's kind of helped me navigate some of those things, who's experienced themselves. But yeah, I mean, you really want to get it in places, and Amazon is obviously a huge marketplace. That's why it's helpful to go with them, because they can get it out there. But if you wanted to get it into Barnes & Noble or other online stores, or even physical stores, getting it into bookstores, like getting it to places so that people can actually discover it is one of the difficult things, but something that's, very industry focused. So having the right partner, or just, again, simply starting with Amazon self-publishing, is usually the right way to go. And then knowing what kind of versions you want to have available as well. Print, softcover, hardback. Do you want to do an audio version? Do you want to do an ebook? Like, knowing all those kind of different things. And more is often better, but more takes more work to get it done right. So yeah, I mean, those are all the considerations that comes when actually distributing the book and getting it out there.
Yeah. And so you mentioned judging a book by its cover and that sort of thing, but generally speaking, if I won't even look at a book unless I have a reason to look at it,
Sure.
I won't even notice the cover until someone tells me to, I read something about it. So what are some ideas for promoting the book to help get it in front of more people?
So once you've launched a book, that can feel like, a weight's off, a sigh of relief, and all that kind of stuff, which it should. I mean, you should very much, if you're able to get to that point of publishing a book, you've done something that most people dream about but don't actually ever accomplish. So good job to you, pat on the back. But the work is really just beginning. And that was one of the tough things to realize, again, the first time I published a book was, it's one thing to put it out there, and maybe that's the goal for some people. It's just, I want to get my book published and say it's there and be able to revel in that. But if you actually want to get people to read it, if you actually want people to purchase it, and trying to make money off of a book is a very difficult thing to do, and maybe you make a little bit off of it, but that requires a lot of promotion. So, being able to use marketing channels, and obviously that's a lot of what we do at GreenMellen, is not promoting books, it's promoting businesses, but you use a lot of those same principles of maybe building a website for it, and maybe using social media, and maybe building an email list and sharing with people that way, and knowing who your audience is and where do you go talk to them, and doing speaking. Like, the list is just endless of things that you want to do, but it's a good practice in building a platform and using your influence to help talk about your book. And that's one of the things is some people don't want to be salesmen, and that includes me. It's hard to continue to talk about it and promote yourself. It feels kind of weird, but you've got to talk about it and talk it up and not stop until you're like blue in the face for like 2 or 3 years after you've published the book. It never really stops. Like, you always kind of have to be in some way selling the book, but usually about 2 to 3 years is the life of how long you want to keep talking about it actively. And maybe by that point you've published another book, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. You mentioned the word credibility, and I think it's interesting with books, where having a book grows your credibility, but having your credibility behind a book helps sell more of the book. So it's kind of a fun cycle. As you get on more podcasts and do more things, you become a bit more well-known to help promote the book, but the book is what sort of led those opportunities to get you in those places to become more well-known. So it can be a fun, vicious cycle, but hard to get spun up,
Yes, yeah. It can be both things, vicious and difficult and happy. Again, publishing my first few books have definitely opened opportunities for me to do speaking engagements and go on other podcasts and write for certain blogs and publications. So yeah, if you do it the right way, and again, if you understand your audience and understand what you're going after, and you have expertise and research in that area, it makes it a lot easier for those opportunities to come along.
Yep, absolutely.
So if you have been, thank you for listening to this episode of the Brighter Web Podcast, brought to you by GreenMellen, a digital marketing agency. To help your business keep up with the latest digital marketing trends, check us out at greenmellen.com. You can also find show notes and more episodes at abrighterweb.com. And if you want to check out my book, you can go to storycyclebook.com and learn more there.